I didn't think a relationship could end without screaming, cheating accusations, or some dramatic explosion that everyone else could see. I thought breakups happened in tears and fights. I thought they happened after months of arguments, not after dinner at my favorite restaurant, not on an anniversary I had been counting down to. I was wrong. My boyfriend ended our relationship on our anniversary because I didn't get his jokes. That's what he said. He sat on the edge of my bed, phone glowing in his hand, barely looking at me, and told me we didn't click anymore, that my sense of humor had changed, that he couldn't imagine marrying someone who didn't understand him. And I believed him. For a while, I really did. I replayed every conversation in my head, every time I missed a reference, every joke that went over my head because I hadn't watched the same show or followed the same meme page. I wondered if I had slowly become boring, if nursing school and long shifts had drained something light and fun out of me without me noticing. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known that night, was that this wasn't about jokes at all. It was about another girl. It was about weeks of late-night study sessions. It was about drinks that weren't really about drinking. It was about a relationship that didn't end suddenly. It ended conveniently. But on that night, all I knew was that I was sitting on my bed in a dress I had chosen carefully, listening to a man I loved explain why I wasn't enough anymore. I remember the room feeling too quiet. I remember how my chest felt tight, like my lungs forgot how to expand properly. I remember staring at his shoes on my floor and thinking, this can't be happening today. Not today. Our anniversary, 4 days before my birthday, 1 day before a non-refundable trip I had planned for us. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't cry, he didn't even look particularly upset. He just looked done. And the worst part? I let him walk out without a fight. I nodded, wiped my face, and told him it was probably best if he left. I didn't know yet that this breakup wasn't the truth. It was the cover story, and the real damage was still coming. If you had asked me a year ago what love looked like, I would have described something simple. A hand reaching for mine in a crowded room. A coffee showing up next to my textbooks without me asking. A laugh that felt like permission to be young and messy and alive. That was Brandon to me. I was 19 when everything fell apart. But when I first met him, I was 18 and convinced I had all the time in the world. I was in my first year of college, the kind of first year where you still believe you can do everything. Take hard classes, have a social life, keep your grades up, stay pretty, stay fun, stay interesting. I was a party girl back then. I don't say that like it's a badge or a shame, just a fact. I loved loud music and crowded apartments. I loved the feeling of being part of a big group, the way Friday nights blurred into Saturday mornings, the way it felt like nothing bad could really reach us as long as we were laughing. Brandon was already 22. Not in a creepy way, not in a he was so much older way, just older enough that he seemed confident in spaces where I still felt like I was auditioning. We met through that big weekend friend group, the kind that forms when you're new on campus and everyone is still collecting people like souvenirs. Someone's roommate's friend brings someone from a different program and suddenly you're all in the same kitchen, shouting over music, passing around cheap drinks pretending you're all best friends. Brandon and I clicked fast. It wasn't even one dramatic moment. It was smaller than that, a conversation in a corner, a shared look across a room when someone told a ridiculous story. The kind of connection that feels effortless, like you've been speaking the same language for a long time and just didn't know it. We liked the same music. We both loved going out. We both had that goofy sense of humor where everything could become a joke if you said it with the right face. When he made me laugh, it wasn't polite laughter. It was the kind where your stomach hurts and you can't breathe and you have to wipe your eyes. And I loved that he seemed consistent, because so many guys my age felt like firecrackers. Bright, loud, gone. Brandon felt like someone who actually showed up. He texted back. He remembered things. He'd bring up a detail I mentioned once, like it mattered enough to keep. We didn't become official immediately. We did that slow drift that feels casual but isn't. Hanging out as part of the group, but somehow always ending up side by side, walking home together more often than not. His hand brushing mine, then not pulling away when our fingers touched. A few months in, we became official. Nothing fancy. No big public announcement, just a moment where he looked at me seriously and asked if I was his girlfriend. I said yes, and for the first year, I swear it felt easy. We didn't fight, not once. I'm not exaggerating. We had little disagreements, like where to eat, what movie to watch, whether we should go out or stay in, but nothing that ever turned into something sharp. My roommates noticed. They'd watch us together and make comments like, "You two are weirdly healthy," or "Do you ever argue?" like it was suspicious. Brandon did thoughtful things. He brought me coffee when I was up late studying. He'd stop by with snacks because he happened to be nearby, even when I knew he'd driven across campus just to see me for 15 minutes. When I was stressed, he'd sit on my bed and tell me a stupid story until I laughed again. And I did things for him too. I helped him with essays when he procrastinated, because he always did. I'd sit next to him, laptop open, reading his rough drafts out loud while he groaned dramatically and promised he'd start earlier next time. I'd edit his paragraphs, fix his citations, tease him about how he'd survive in the real world if I wasn't there to rescue his deadlines. We spent almost every weekend together, usually with our friend group, pre-gaming at someone's apartment, then going downtown. Drinks, music, sweaty dance floors, fast food at 2 a.m., waking up late the next day with headaches and laughter and memories that felt like proof we were living. In my mind, it wasn't just fun. It was our foundation. I imagined our future in a way that felt natural, like of course we'd keep choosing each other. Of course we'd keep growing together. We even talked about it. Apartments someday, plans, little half-serious jokes about marriage that still made my stomach flip because part of me believed it. I didn't see the danger in how much our relationship depended on being in the same rhythm. I didn't notice how much of our connection was built on nights out and shared jokes, and the version of me who could always keep up. And if I'm being honest, I didn't want to notice. Because for the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged to someone, like I had someone who chose me in a room full of people. That's what made what happened later feel so unreal. Because when the shift started, it wasn't dramatic. It was subtle, like a song changing in the background while you're still dancing, until suddenly you look around and realize you don't know the words anymore. Looking back, I can see the exact moment when my life started to pull in a different direction than Brandon's. At the time, it felt like good news, something to be proud of. I got accepted into the nursing program. It was competitive, everyone knew that. People talked about acceptance letters like they were lottery tickets. When the email came in, I stared at my phone for a full minute before opening it, heart pounding like I was about to read my own future out loud. When I saw the word congratulations, I cried. Not pretty crying. The kind where your chest caves in and you have to sit down because your legs forget how to work. I called my parents first, then my roommates, and finally Brandon. He sounded genuinely happy for me. He told me he was proud of me. He said he always knew I could do it. And I believed him. What I didn't fully process then was that my acceptance didn't just change my schedule, it changed me. Nursing school wasn't like my general education classes. It came with orientations, clinical requirements, early mornings, late nights, constant pressure to stay sharp. Because mistakes weren't just about grades anymore. They were about people, about responsibility. On top of that, I picked up more hours at my waitressing job. Not because I wanted to be away from Brandon, but because I was thinking ahead for the first time in my life. Tuition, supplies, rent, saving a little so I wouldn't be constantly panicking. Brandon, at the same time, had just finished a rough semester. His course load got lighter, less pressure, more free time. At first, the imbalance didn't feel dangerous. He started going out more often. Thursdays at first, then weekends, which wasn't new, then Tuesdays, because there were drink specials, then random nights that didn't really have names anymore. I noticed the pattern, but I didn't react right away. He wasn't getting blackout drunk. He still went to class. He still worked his part-time job. From the outside, nothing looked wrong. And because we didn't live together, his drinking stayed just far enough away that I could pretend it wasn't my business. But when we hung out, alcohol was always there. Every time. A beer in his hand when he came over. A flask pulled out during what was supposed to be a coffee date, a casual. It just makes it more fun, when I raised an eyebrow. I told myself I was being uptight. I told myself this was just a phase, that I was the one changing, not him. And then there was that Sunday. The one that keeps replaying in my head now, because it feels like the moment everything turned. Brandon texted that he was coming over and bringing a six-pack. I was cleaning my room before he arrived, folding laundry, making my bed, trying to create some sense of calm before another busy week. That's when it hit me. I couldn't remember the last time we had spent time together without him drinking. Not one moment. The realization sat heavy in my chest. Not panic, just concern. The kind that comes from caring about someone and noticing a pattern you wish wasn't there. When he arrived, I made a decision. I told him I wasn't going to drink that day. I suggested we just watch a movie sober. And then, carefully, Gently, I told him I was a little worried about how often he'd been drinking lately. I reminded him of last year, how he'd helped me quit smoking because he cared about my health. I told him this was coming from the same place. Concern, not judgment. He nodded. He said, "Yeah, you're probably right." But I saw it. The flicker of irritation in his eyes, the way his jaw tightened just a little. He put the beer in my fridge without opening one, but something between us shifted. During the movie, he barely spoke. His phone seemed more interesting than anything on the screen, or anything I said. When I asked if he was okay, he shrugged and said he was fine. He wasn't fine. Over the next few days, his distance became impossible to ignore. He still texted me, still made plans, but when we were together, he was somewhere else. One-word answers, constant scrolling, that empty feeling of sitting next to someone who isn't really there. I asked him more than once what was wrong. He told me he was just feeling down, that it wasn't about me, that I shouldn't worry. So I didn't push. I gave him space, because that's what good girlfriends do, right? At the same time, my life kept accelerating. Over 40 hours a week at work, nursing program orientation, deadlines, responsibility stacking on responsibility. I was exhausted, but I was also proud. And through all of that, I kept thinking about our anniversary. Friday. Something solid, something happy, something we could hold on to. I didn't know yet that I was planning a celebration for a relationship that was already halfway out the door. By the time Friday came, I was running on adrenaline and hope. I was exhausted, physically, mentally, but I told myself it would be worth it. Our anniversary felt like a checkpoint, proof that even though my life was changing, we were still steady, still choosing each other. I had planned everything quietly. Weeks earlier, I had booked a cabin in Gatlinburg. Mountains, quiet, just us. No parties, no crowds, no distractions. A weekend where we could actually talk, reconnect, remember why we worked so well together. It wasn't cheap. $1,400, non-refundable. That number sat in my chest every time I thought about it, but I told myself love was worth investing in. We were a year and a half in. He was about to leave for a 2-month internship in Bangkok. This was our moment to pause before life sped up again. Friday morning, I woke up nervous in a way that felt almost childish. I picked out my outfit carefully, did my makeup slower than usual. I kept checking my phone, waiting for signs, anything, that he was excited too. When Brandon texted asking if we could get dinner before heading back to my place, I felt relief flood through me. This is good, I thought. This is us getting back on track. Dinner was nice. Not magical, not terrible, just nice. He took me to my favorite restaurant. He smiled. He asked about my week. Afterward, he suggested we stop by Sephora and told me to pick out whatever I wanted. I remember thinking how strange it was that a shopping stop felt like reassurance, but I took it anyway. I wanted to believe. Back at my apartment, the shift came back immediately. The warmth disappeared like someone flipped a switch. He sat on my bed, phone in hand, scrolling. I talked. He answered, but only just enough to be polite. When I tried to sit closer, he leaned away. Brandon had never been overly affectionate, but this was different. This was absence. My chest tightened. I told him, quietly, that I needed affection tonight, that this day mattered to me, that I felt like I had been the one holding things together lately. Before he could answer, there was a knock on my door. Jack and Tyler. They were just stopping by to drop off a textbook. The change in Brandon was instant. It was like watching someone wake up. He laughed. He joked. He leaned forward, engaged, animated, fully present in a way he hadn't been with me all night. His voice got lighter, his eyes brighter. I sat there invisible. As soon as they left, he shut down again. That's when I knew. Not suspected, not worried. Knew. Something was wrong in a way that didn't have an easy fix. I asked him directly. What followed didn't feel like a fight. It felt like an execution. He sat on the edge of my bed and told me we didn't click anymore, that I didn't understand his humor, that he couldn't imagine marrying someone who didn't get him. Each sentence landed softly, but cut deeply. I stared at him, waiting for something else, for a real explanation, for effort, for a pause where he said, "But I want to work on it." It never came. We sat in silence. My throat burned. Tears fell, no matter how hard I tried to hold them back. He asked me to say something. I couldn't. Eventually, he said he should go. I nodded. I watched him walk out on our anniversary, one day before our non-refundable trip, 4 days before my birthday, without even realizing I was watching the end of something much bigger than a relationship. That night, I cried until my body hurt. And I still believed his excuse. The first thing I noticed after he left was how loud my apartment felt. Not because of noise, but because of the absence of it. The hum of the fridge, the ticking of the clock, the faint sound of laughter drifting in from somewhere outside, people living their lives like nothing had just cracked open inside my chest. I sat on my bed in the same dress I'd worn to dinner, makeup still on, phone in my hand, staring at the wall, like if I looked long enough, something would make sense. It didn't. I cried in waves. Quiet at first, tears slipping down while I pressed my palm to my mouth. Then harder, uglier, my shoulders shaking, my chest aching like I'd swallowed something sharp. I replayed everything. Every missed joke. Every time I chose studying over going out. Every night I went home early while he stayed out. Maybe I really had changed. Maybe I stopped being fun. Maybe I pushed him away without realizing it. The next morning, my eyes were swollen and my head felt heavy, like I hadn't slept at all, which I hadn't. My best friend Mia called to check in about the Gatlinburg trip. I broke down halfway through the first sentence. She didn't hesitate. She told me to pack my bag. She said she'd drive 5 hours if she had to. She said we weren't letting that cabin and my heart go to waste. So we went. Gatlinburg wasn't the romantic escape I had imagined, but it gave me space to breathe. We hiked, walked through shops, sat quietly on benches watching people pass by. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we didn't. At night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how a relationship could end without warning. Back home, Brandon texted, "Hi." I stared at the message until the letters blurred. I didn't reply. Then, "Do you want to talk?" 2 missed calls. I ignored those too. Eventually, I told him I needed space. I asked him directly if he wanted to work on us or if he was done. His answer wasn't an answer. He said he wasn't sure, that he needed time, that he hoped I knew he cared. It felt like being left in a doorway, neither inside nor outside, just stuck. I told him leaving me on our anniversary was incredibly hurtful, that I loved him, but I needed to approach this on my terms now. He said he thought I wanted him to leave, that he hadn't planned the conversation, that he loved me too. And somehow that hurt more, because love that disappears when it gets uncomfortable doesn't feel like love at all. I tried to move forward anyway. I deep cleaned my apartment until my hands ached. I reorganized drawers that didn't need reorganizing. I let my roommates drag me out to bars even when I didn't feel like smiling. I forced myself to show up. But every quiet moment brought the same question back. Was I really dumped because I didn't get his jokes? I told myself yes, because the truth, whatever it was, felt too heavy to imagine. By the time Monday came, something inside me had hardened. Not healed, hardened. Like a bruise you keep pressing, not because it feels good, but because pain at least proves something is still there. I packed Brandon's things methodically. His sweatshirts first, then the books he'd loaned me, then the stuffed penguin he'd won for me at a carnival, smiling stupidly from the top of the pile, like it didn't understand it was about to be erased. I placed everything in a box and texted him to meet me at his apartment complex. There was a rooftop area with benches, neutral ground. I didn't trust myself to be inside his space. When he arrived, I was sitting on one of the benches, smoking a cigarette I hadn't planned on lighting. The first thing he did was comment on it. He told me it was bad for my health. He handed me the e-cigarette we'd bought together a year ago when I was trying to quit, like muscle memory had kicked in before empathy. That small moment told me more than he realized. He was comfortable. I was bleeding. I stayed calm. I told him the way he ended things was cruel, that long-term relationships don't dissolve because of 2 weeks of discomfort. That distance is something you work through, not run from. He didn't apologize for the timing. He said he couldn't help how he felt. Then he did something that made my stomach drop. He blamed me. He said I forced the breakup by asking what was wrong, that my questions pushed him into a conversation he hadn't planned to have. I stared at him, trying to reconcile the boy I loved with the man in front of me. When he repeated the joke excuse again, I felt something shift. This wasn't confusion. This was avoidance. He called me the best girlfriend he'd ever had, said I did everything right, said he still thought we weren't compatible. I asked him directly if he was willing to try. He said no, so I handed him the box. He suggested I come upstairs instead. I refused. As he carried the box away, he handed me some old Polaroids that had been sitting on top. Pictures of us laughing, drunk, arms around each other like nothing could touch us. I told him to throw them away. He hesitated. Then he did. Later that day, he texted again, apologized, said this wasn't easy for him either. I didn't respond. I unfriended him everywhere, changed my Netflix password, updated my relationship status to single like I was signing a death certificate. In a moment of weakness, I bought Tinder Gold. It felt empty. And then the cracks widened. 3 weeks later, I was at a bar near campus with friends from my nursing program, celebrating surviving our first major exam. I was standing at the bar when someone tapped my shoulder. Tyler, one of Brandon's roommates. He asked if we could talk somewhere quieter. The way he shifted his weight told me this wasn't small talk. He told me Brandon had been seeing someone else. Amber, a girl from his statistics class. They'd been studying together for weeks before our breakup. Late nights, drinks afterward, a slow drift that suddenly explained everything. My chest went cold. Brandon's distance, the drinking, the defensiveness, the timing. It all clicked into place with a sickening clarity. That night, I checked Brandon's social media. A wine glass across from a woman's hand with red nail polish, a restaurant I didn't recognize, a story posted too casually to be accidental. The next morning, Brandon called. I answered. He denied overlap, said nothing physical happened until after we broke up, claimed Amber was just a friend. I mentioned the drinking. He snapped, accused me of being controlling, of trying to change him, of monitoring his habits. I hung up. Later that day, I ran into Jack, another roommate, who finally admitted the truth. Brandon had kissed Amber at a bar 2 weeks before our breakup. That was the moment the lie died. The breakup wasn't about humor. It was about replacing me. Once the truth surfaced, everything else collapsed behind it. The humor excuse, the confusion, the idea that I had somehow failed him by growing up. All of it turned to dust. I didn't confront Brandon again. Not right away. I didn't scream or send paragraphs or demand explanations. I just went quiet. And that silence was heavier than anything I could have said. At night, the memories came in fragments. His laugh. The way he used to rest his arm across my shoulders at parties. The nights I helped him with assignments while he promised he'd try harder next semester. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling the physical weight of heartbreak press against my chest. Not sharp pain, dull, constant, exhausting. Like carrying something heavy you're not allowed to put down. What hurt most wasn't just that he kissed someone else. It was realizing how easily he rewrote our story. To Amber, we were basically broken up. To me, we were planning apartments and trips and futures. I questioned everything. Had I imagined how solid we were? Had he been drifting away while I was holding tighter? Had our entire relationship only worked when I made myself small enough to fit into his life? I stopped enjoying things. Music felt hollow. Food tasted wrong. I'd walk across campus and feel like I was watching my life through glass, present but disconnected. My birthday came and went. Brandon texted, "Happy birthday." I replied, "Thank you." Nothing else. That night, I cried alone in my room while my roommates sang to me in the kitchen, trying to keep things light. I smiled when I was supposed to. I blew out candles. I went back to my room and sat on the floor afterward, holding my knees to my chest, wondering how someone could be gone and still everywhere at the same time. The email from Brandon came a few days later. Long, apologetic, defensive. He admitted he'd kissed Amber once before the breakup, but called it a drunk mistake. Said he ended things because he was confused and thought it was the responsible choice rather than cheating. It felt like being told I should be grateful he didn't hurt me worse. I didn't respond. Instead, I focused on surviving. I forced myself to get out of bed, to go to class, to show up for clinicals. I walked for hours every day, just moving forward because standing still felt unbearable. Some days I felt almost okay. Other days, I couldn't breathe past the tightness in my chest. But slowly, something else began to form beneath the pain. Clarity. The realization that love doesn't make excuses, that commitment doesn't disappear when something new shows up, that I hadn't lost him because I changed. I lost him because I refused to stop growing. And that understanding hurt, but it also felt like the beginning of something else. The message from Amber came when I wasn't expecting anything at all. It was a regular afternoon. Luna, my new beagle mix, was asleep at my feet, her small body rising and falling in steady breaths. I had just come back from a long walk, my legs tired in a way that felt earned, not depleted. When I saw the notification, my stomach tightened instinctively. Her name. I stared at the screen for a full minute before opening it, bracing myself for something defensive, something territorial, something I didn't have the energy to handle. Instead, it was an apology. She said she was sorry for her role in everything, that she wanted to clear the air, that she hadn't known the full truth when she started seeing Brandon. According to her, he told her that we were basically over, that we were just going through the motions, staying together out of habit, that he was planning to end things but didn't want to hurt me at the wrong time. I felt a strange calm reading her words. Not relief, not anger, just confirmation. She said that once they became official, things started to feel off. Brandon avoided accountability. He blamed me for forcing the breakup conversation. He dismissed concerns instead of addressing them. When she pressed him about the timing, about ending things with me on our anniversary, he got defensive. The same pattern, the same deflection. She ended things with him after 3 weeks. She said she couldn't trust someone who treated his previous relationship with such disregard, that she felt uncomfortable being part of a story built on half-truths. I thanked her, not because I wanted friendship, not because I needed her validation, but because the last pieces finally slid into place. This wasn't about humor. This wasn't about compatibility. This wasn't even about Amber. This was about a man who avoided discomfort by rewriting reality. A few weeks later, Brandon emailed me again. He was cutting his Bangkok internship short. Things weren't going well. Language barriers, issues with his supervisor. He said he missed home. He said he wanted to catch up when he returned. I didn't respond right away. I sat with it. And then I wrote back, briefly, clearly. I told him I knew how he'd misrepresented our relationship to Amber, that I wasn't interested in catching up, that I wished him well. His reply was exactly what I needed to see. Defensive, accusatory, disappointed in me for not being mature enough to meet for coffee. Insistent that I was choosing to believe the worst version of him. And in that moment, something inside me locked into place. I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't wondering if I had misunderstood. I wasn't hoping he'd explain something that would make it all hurt less. I saw him clearly, and clarity, I learned, is its own kind of power. After that last email, I stopped waiting for anything from Brandon. No apology that would finally sound sincere, no explanation that would rewrite the ending, no version of him that matched the one I had loved. I blocked his email, not in anger, but in acceptance. Life didn't suddenly get easier after that. It didn't turn into some inspirational montage where everything clicked into place and the pain vanished overnight. But the noise quieted. Brandon left for Bangkok shortly after, and I didn't realize how much energy I'd been spending bracing myself for potential run-ins until I didn't have to anymore. Campus felt lighter without that constant awareness humming in the background. I poured myself into what was in front of me. Nursing school demanded everything I had, and then some, but I showed up. I passed exams I wasn't sure I could. I formed a study group that met twice a week. People who became familiar faces and steady presences instead of just classmates. Luna became my anchor, training her, walking her, learning her routines. She gave my days shape when my emotions still came in waves. When I felt the ache rise in my chest, I clipped on her leash and went outside, letting movement do what thinking couldn't. I deleted the dating apps. I wasn't ready, and that was okay. Spring break came and went. I traveled with friends. I laughed again. Real laughter, not the kind that felt borrowed. I stopped checking my phone to see if Brandon had watched my stories. I stopped wondering what he was doing, who he was with, whether he missed me. And then something unexpected happened. I stopped missing him. I missed the girl I was before everything broke, the one who believed love was simple and effort was always enough. But I didn't want to be her again, because she accepted less than she deserved. The fallout didn't destroy him publicly. There was no dramatic karma moment, no big confrontation, no apology tour. The consequences were quieter than that. Amber left, I walked away, and he was left with his own patterns, his own explanations, his own version of events that no longer had an audience. And for the first time, I felt like I wasn't losing anything anymore. I was gaining space. It's strange how heartbreak changes shape over time. At first, it's heavy, like something pressing on your chest, making every breath feel deliberate. Then slowly, almost without you noticing, it loosens. Not because you forget, but because you grow around it. 2 months after everything ended, I realized I could think about Brandon without my stomach dropping. That didn't mean it didn't matter. It meant it no longer owned me. My life looks different now. Not dramatic, just real. I wake up early for clinicals. I come home tired, in a way that feels purposeful. I study with people who know me as I am now, not who I used to be when partying was my personality. Luna sleeps at the foot of my bed every night, her quiet presence grounding me when my thoughts wander too far back. I volunteer at the animal shelter on weekends, walking dogs, helping with adoption events, giving care without expectation, and realizing how much that heals something inside me. Sometimes memories still surface. A song, a street near campus, a joke that reminds me of how easily I used to laugh. but they don't crush me anymore. They pass through. What I've learned, what I wish I had known earlier, is this. Love isn't about staying the same so someone else doesn't feel threatened. It isn't about shrinking your goals to preserve someone's comfort. And it certainly isn't about accepting blame for someone else's unwillingness to grow. Brandon didn't leave because I stopped understanding his jokes. He left because I started understanding myself. I don't regret loving him. He was my first love. That matters. But I'm grateful I didn't build my future on someone who only loved me when I fit neatly into his life. The person I am now is stronger, quieter, more aware. And when love finds me again, and it will, I won't be afraid to ask for presence, honesty, and effort. Because I finally understand something that heartbreak taught me the hard way. The person you become after pain is never the same as the one who entered it. And that's not a loss. That's growth.